Hi, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours. If you're watching on YouTube, you may find more information at officehours.global. First hour is general discussion about media or virtual production. Second hour is things we'd like to spend a little bit more time on. Today, we have special guest. Marcelo Moyano is going to be here, and he is from Voodoo. Voodoo is another way to kind of do what we're doing here, but it's got a lot more tools that I think a lot of folks here might find really interesting. Marcelo and I have been talking about this for quite some time. So he's gonna show you how it works and the niche that it fills, I think, which is very different than what we do here at Zoom. Also tomorrow, we'll talk about photogrammetry. How do we turn photographs into 3D models? So we'll talk about how to get started with that and how it works, and then answer your questions. We're going to talk about Office Hours 2.0 on Thursday. So that is we'll just give you an update of where we're at. We're getting very close now to launching. Probably February 14th is our target date, and we think we're going to make it. So we'll talk about that on Thursday. We're going to talk. We have the folks from Microsoft Broadcast system, Microsoft Teams Broadcast will be on Friday, and so they'll be showing you their version of this process, and so we're looking forward to having them there. And of course, we have education. Emily Russo will be talking more about Google Slides on Saturday, so that's what we have coming up. Let's go ahead and jump into the questions, Bill.
Absolutely. Thank you, Alex. Chris Fenwick starts us off today from the panel, and he says, my friend Lee Herbet was having problems with video conferencing in his home studio. WebEx was the worst offender. No video would connect until he went to Wi-Fi. I can give more details, but can we review what we discussed in the pre-show?
Go ahead, John.
Yeah, we went over I guess using multiple routers and multiple layer 3 devices, it can result in a double NAT, which will prevent the setup of the audio for both sides. A typical, what happens with that is port-to-port mapping isn't being transferred from NAT to NAT. And so you can get really deep into networking and understand the differences there. I would say the easiest fix, if they're using multiple like wireless routers connected via Ethernet cables to each other, was move whatever that secondary device is from the WAN port to the LAN port. That will remove the double NAT and allow them to still extend their wireless if needed throughout their house.
Yeah. So, yeah, go ahead, Chris.
I was just going to say, on the bizarre off chance I don't actually know what NAT stands for, because maybe we
basically
should
it's. I mean, to simplify it, it's basically mapping. You've got to try to keep it simple, it's just basically the IP numbers that you have, that are there. They're basically changing rooms. You're going from room to room and saying this IP is actually this IP between the different routers, and that can make WebRTC has a hard time transversing that, and so it's not that it can't, and Zoom has some special sauce that makes it do it really well, actually. But it still can be, as you start to go through multiple devices, if they start changing that environment and then the mapping doesn't make sense to the, and especially in high secure environments. So if you turn all the security up on your video conferencing, it becomes much more prevalent. And so the best thing to do is to take an Ethernet cable and plug it straight into your laptop and push it right into where it's coming into the house. And then if it works there, then you know that it's somewhere in between. And then you just start moving up the food chain until you get to it. But that's often why a Wi-Fi signal will work and an Ethernet signal won't, is because the Wi-Fi signal is probably coming it probably has less in the chain, and that's what's allowing it to work when Ethernet's not.
So in theory, you have a box here, and it comes out of the wall, plugs into this box, and it might be the modem from the.
But usually a modem has like one or two, Ethernet. You want to plug right into that.
And sometimes they have a Wi-Fi spot too, and then from there he's plugged into possibly some sort of a switch where it splits it out into his house, and so this switch and this router.
If it's a smart switch or a router, if it's a dumb switch, it shouldn't have any effect at all. But if it's a smart switch, it could be problematic. The only other thing to think of is if he has this should not be the case. But the only other thing I would look at is if those aren't the issues, the other thing to look at is if your switch has an eco setting. So if you have a high-end switch that has an eco settings are the devil. Like they are like the first thing I do if I open up a switch. They basically the Ethernet one, the switch wants to turn off all the time or power down when it's not being, and it's really good if you have thousands of switches in a company. having them all turning off a little bit is good for you because it saves you a lot of money and it saves the environment and everything else. If you're at home, you should turn those off because it causes all kinds of havoc with things that need constant connections like WebRTC. It also has a problem with Dante, destroys Dante. And so so those are the things that need things that are constantly on, like streaming. Don't like eco switches. So, and their settings, they're usually deep in the switch somewhere that you have to dig into to find them. It's different for every switch, but you want to turn those settings off, and so you'll find that a lot of things run better after that. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
Yeah, the one thing out of everything that's been said, the one thing that really interests me is if when you switch it to Wi-Fi, it works, which makes me wonder if he's using the Wi-Fi in his house or he's using Wi-Fi on like his phone or something like that.
No, I think
because then it would bypass it that way.
Yeah, I think that the Wi-Fi is just higher up the chain. Next question.
Next one comes to us from Douglas Carmichael, and he says, Tripp-Lite makes rack-mounted air conditioning units. When would you use those in comparison to conventional fans as seen in the Office Hours 2.0 rack?
Go ahead, John.
So in our data center, we actually use those to supplement our crack units. So we ran into a situation where we couldn't get enough airflow within the data center with how dense that we wanted to make it. And so we supplemented with in-row cooling. And I'm not sure if that's the same thing you're looking at here, but definitely very useful if it's in a contained environment, not going to be very useful just in a wide open room.
Yeah, go ahead, Bill.
I was going to say that because I saw this and I thought there was a rack-mounted air conditioning unit. I mean, all those years I worked in Arizona and I was in front of equipment and I was burning up because I was an outside shoot. I don't think this is going to run off Anton Bowers. I looked it up real quick, 3.5 kilowatts. So yeah, this is definitely a machine room solution where you have control because I'm pretty sure that this is going to be very loud.
Yeah, go ahead, Doug.
I'm not sure if the Tripp-Lite can be modified at all, but if you want to do kind of a custom setup, these Noctua fans right here are very effective and they work great and they're very, very quiet. So those are a good solution if that I don't know if the Tripp-Lite can be modified, but if you can get something that you can create that, it might be a good solution.
Yeah. I don't know if we have a lot of fans. I don't know if I've ever used a rack mounted air conditioning unit, which is pretty amazing. We've definitely worked in places where it's really, really hot. And of course our servers get really hot on their own. So we've literally had ones where you see other Tripp-Lites where you have a big mobile unit with the tubes coming out of the top, and one's, one's pushing out, the other one's exhaust. And we literally in the back of a truck will tent in something and just pump huge amounts of cold air into it. You have to be careful of a lot of things around moisture and so on and so forth. But it was the only way we could keep our servers running. So the air conditioning is super powerful, especially in hot environments. It's going to ruin reason that I always tell clients that we can't work over 75 degrees because of the equipment. But it's really for the operators. they can't think over 75 degrees at 10 hours a day. Next question. Oh, go ahead, Chris. Chris, before we jump.
I would be worried about the plumbing involved with air conditioning. Something's going to leak. Something's going to make condensation someday. And to put it in the rack with gear, it seems, I'm sure somebody's thought this out, but my little brain is like going, it doesn't sound safe.
Yeah, I think you have to be careful about it. Next question.
Aaron Giancarelli is here from Flagstaff, Arizona. Next, he says, I want to set up an affordable webcam for looking out my window. What's controllable? That is controllable via online. What does the panelist group suggest? Is a Raspberry Pi setup an option?
Go ahead, Jeffrey.
So one thing you can do, we've talked about this before, is if you get a Wyze security camera, WYZE security camera, you can set it up, or any webcam that does RTSP, you can set it up to show here's my front yard through the Wyze. So basically, you do a firmware update, site update with the RTSP, and then what's that?
Can you pan?
Yes, I can. I can pan that, but I'd have to go to my phone to do so. Right. But yeah, I can easily pan it from the phone because that is the PT version of the Wyze camera. And but yeah, if you set that up, that's $35 right there.
Right, and I think that you can have. My question, I guess, would be whether it has to be outside or inside. It just says for looking out the window. If it's inside, there's lots of little PTZs. What was the little one that we were talking about? I can't think of the name of it though.
You mean the OBS bot?
Yeah, the OBS bot. I mean, something like that, you could probably find a way to control as well. I don't know whether you'd be able to do it with the Raspberry Pi, though. That'd be an interesting puzzle. Next question.
Next one comes from Deborah Woodfork in Washington, D.C. And Deborah says, what advice would you give to clients as they are preparing an RFP, a request for proposal, for a first engagement as a potential client?
Go ahead, John.
If I was writing an RFP, I would ask about their insurance. I would ask about what their backup strategies or their redundancies are. And I'd ask for referrals from other customers or prior jobs. Those are the three things that I would ask.
Go ahead, John.
I always want to make sure that if I'm doing any sort of large bid, I'm getting at least 3 different vendors. I'm talking to, like John said, everything he covered there. But really, it's about understanding and trusting that partner you're going to eventually choose from, and really being comfortable with that decision, not making the cheapest choice, but making the right choice for you, making sure you're getting what you want at the end of the day. Yeah. Not someone who's just telling you what you want to hear.
Go ahead, John. Oh, sorry, John. I'm sorry, Bill. Sorry, we have people in the background that need to go forward. If they don't go forward, I lose track of what's going on. So it's like, if we're going to hand this off, you have to hit it right. All right, go ahead, Bill.
No problem. I read this a little differently. It says, what advice would you give to clients? So I'm in business. I've got a client and they are preparing a request for proposal. Normally, I, as a client existing, wouldn't be involved in that at all. I have had clients come to me quietly and say, we really love working with you. We've been forced by corporate to put this out for proposal. Can you help us, give us a few things that we should be looking for? And it's kind of an under the table. Are there things that you do that nobody else does that maybe we can help us pick you? And, that's kind of in the gray area of things. But it's an interesting dilemma. So unless I'm reading this wrong, they're looking for tuning an RFP so that maybe
well, I think it's just asking for, you have to, you're preparing an RFP for a first engagement. So it's a request for proposal. So the main thing is that this is, how do I tell people what I want? This is, so like how, I don't think this is really, because you could get in, that's a bidding thing, but for request for proposal, you need to tell them, okay, so when is it happening? Where is it happening? When do you have load-in access? When do you have, so these are the details that, like, if someone calls me and says, I have a job, the questions I ask are, when is it going to happen? When are you loading in? Do you know what the internet's like? Do you have people, participants? How many guests will there be? How many speakers will there be? Who is doing the staging? Who is doing the lighting? Who is doing, I want to know all those little bits and pieces of those. If I'm streaming it, where am I broadcasting out to? Do I have, and so, and I, because I've done a lot of these, I'll ask stuff and I'm already deciding, oh, this is in this country. And I know that the internet is good with this, or I'm going to have to put a sat truck there. I'm going to have to do, there's a whole bunch of things that start to that I'm piecing together if you're talking to someone that's good at it. I think that, again, a lot of those, as you start to build those proposals, if you have any drawings, if you have timelines, if you have those types of things, usually in RFPs, we don't see people put in like who's in it. So don't, I wouldn't do that. I would keep it. If that RFP if you have VIPs and that RFP falls into someone's hands, you don't want them to actually know who's there. So those, that's how I work anyway. So there's just a lot of this many guests, and this is how they'll be laid out, and this is the run of show. If you know it, this is what's going to happen during the day, because that's going to help them kind of start to figure out those pieces. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, the way this is written, it almost sounds like it says, "What advice would you give to clients as they are preparing RFPs?" for the first engagement as a potential client? It almost sounds like this person has like a back channel to the person putting out the RFP.
Right.
It's like, hey, look, here's the deal. Alex, I really want to work with you, but I have to do this RFP. So how do we write the RFP so that you're the only guy that can actually...
Well, we do that a lot because
I know, but that's another way of looking at this whole thing. Like,
right.
Hey, look. Here's the phrase you have to use. Like if you look at like large format consoles used to have like I can't remember what they called it, but it was like a paragraph, and it's like, look, you need to ask for this thing, and that will guarantee that this is the console you're going to get to buy.
We had one with a company that we worked with that was by 2013, and it said you have to have done a minimum of 200 virtual events, and that was only me. So that was so there was no one else that could fulfill it. But and it's important to figure that out if you're already working with a client because or a vendor, because like a person like me, I won't triple bid. If I know that there's a triple bid, I'll just cut it off. Like I'm not interested. Like and I will not triple bid. And it's I don't compete on price. I compete because people know what I do, and so that. But sometimes you get into triple bids, and the only time it'll happen is when someone says, "Well, we're just going to work this out." So triple bids are stupid. Anyway, next question.
Moving on to Adrian Albeck in Brisbane, Australia. Using a 2-output HDMI display link unit with Zoom ISO, I have to constantly re-enable full screen output if I change the source. Is this normal?
Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, I think it is. I had a conversation once with Mr. Carluccio about some features like, why doesn't ISO do this? And he described it to me, and I'm going to use an analogy that Andy did not use. Zoom ISO is like putting a new carburetor on your car, but you're not supposed to drive it by grabbing the linkages. You're supposed to attach a user interface. So Zoom ISO gives you capabilities, but most people are going to use Zoom OSC to operate it.
And that's what we do with 2.0. It's just the two of them together are super powerful because you now have these raw feeds, but you also know what they are. And that's the thing that makes it powerful.
Yeah. So if you're just using Zoom ISO, you might have to jiggle the handle a little more than you think you should, but it wasn't really meant to be a standalone app.
Go ahead, Jeffrey.
So I'm unfortunately going to counter that because I've been doing lots of tests in Zoom ISO in after hours. And the big thing is when somebody leaves, I have to change the source on there. I've never seen it switch out of full screen. If you're going, now I don't know if you're doing active, going from user to active speaker or anything like that, but every time that I change mine to full screen, because when you don't do full screen, you get like a little bar on the bottom of the screen. It'll stay in full screen for me. So my question is, what is the display link adapter that you're using? Are you using the pluggable one that Andy has talked about in the past, and ones that a lot of us use? I'm using it myself. Or are you using a different type of display link adapter?
Chris, are you you're using the one that Andy recommended?
I use the pluggable, yeah.
Right. And we're using SDI cards. So ours are going through Black Siphon and then out four at a time out of the Mac Minis. And I don't think we ever see any debris. Right. Yeah. I just don't like HDMI. So anyway, next question.
Next one comes to us from George Butters in Halifax, Nova Scotia. What interesting tips and tricks do you have for using Streamdecks?
Go ahead, Doug.
So I use Streamdecks all the time, and I have, I think, 4 or 5 of them. What the software I use with it the most is this really good software called Central Control. And this software is pretty slick, and it's kind of a one-time buy, and you own it, starting at $49. But it lets you control other devices. So what I have it do is, for example, I have macros on my TriCaster, and I've mapped those to the Stream Deck buttons, and it works great. Also, I use it on Unity Comms. Unity Comms has a built-in plugin that works right with it that you can use, but it's a very handy tool.
Go ahead, John.
Yeah, I think about Streamdecks as if there's a point of pain that I have, can I automate something? So if I'm like sitting down at my computer for the first time of the day, what are the things that I always do? How can I kind of establish a list of, or push a button and it can open up all the things that I start my day with? I think about anytime I'm looking around for my mouse, if I'm in a meeting like this, like, can I move that button to something I can quickly look down at and push? Just making my life easier. There's a ton of great plugins that they have available, plus the API integrations, which you can start leveraging against anything you can build against, which makes it really fun.
Good, Sky.
Sabrent, the way to connect the again, this great tool to the laptop, I couldn't find enough ways to get enough things plugged into my machine. And so Chris Fenwick suggested the Sabrent powered USB device, and it allowed me to plug in all of the different devices. And so it also gave the power back to the Stream Deck. So that was the hardware solution that I needed. And yes, I use it for Unity a lot.
Mitchell?
I only have memory for so many layers of buttons and things like that, but I do like the Stream Deck working with my Mix Effect Pro. It takes like 100 different actions and consolidates them via Companion into Stream Deck in such a way that it makes it much easier, and the layers are very simple to operate. So it literally makes the ATEM almost obsolete in terms of using it. You use the Stream Deck and it works great.
Go, David.
Yep, I'm big on that Clock 8001 program that I like. I'll use it in productions to send messages to talent where I might not be on camera, and stuff like that. So it comes in handy. Runs on Companion.
So many times I want to send that message.
Yeah. yeah. Hold on, my favorite one is I think that one. Wrap it up. There you go.
You need a little dude going like this. Anyway, that's what Chris does to me. Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, I like using Companion with the web browser button, so you don't actually even need a Stream Deck. So for those of you who just want to play with one, you could download Companion, and you can use pages and pages and pages and pages of buttons, either on a touch screen, or you can use your mouse and click them. The other thing is John sent me this pop socket from Zoom, so I can hold my Stream Deck, and do my muting and cutting with one hand. So kind of cool.
Every time I see pop socket, all I can think of is pop socket. Anyway, if anyone has ever seen that comedy skit. Anyway, so next question.
Moving on, George Butters in Halifax, Nova Scotia says, any suggestions for convincing presenters that a half hour or more of nonstop talk and slides with no audience engagement is a bad idea?
We did some internal testing. I've talked about this before, but it's worth bringing up again. We did some internal testing over a decade ago because we're doing all these live streams and we're trying to figure out, how long will people actually watch, someone talk, and how long will they watch slides. We were doing lots and lots of business live streams, and so there was a bunch of thoughts, and we used eye trackers. So what they would do is they'd literally watch where people were looking and make decisions about whether they're watching our video or not, because we know where our window is and we know where. And what we found was that if someone talks for 5 to 6 minutes without interruption, that people, there was a big, huge drop, like 60% of the viewers would go do something else. If they put on a slide, it would be 60 to 90 seconds before they go do something else. And so it's just there. Slides are just a knife to your presentation. Like it is, no one's watching, and we weren't really watching in the real world either. Most of us were checking our emails and tweeting and, looking at what we were going to have for lunch and organizing with other people in the back of the room, when people were putting up slides, and it felt like more people were there because they were all sitting in the seats. But as someone who's spoken at many of these conferences, I got out of that within the first couple speaking engagements I did at NAB, I stopped like relying on my slides. And I just said, okay, we're going to have a conversation. I'm not very good at this. Let's just talk, and I'd have slides with examples and I'd go through them, but it was just an open conversation. And my ratings went up. So the conversation is what kind of pulls people into the conversation, and people will counter that. Well, people watch TV all the time. Yeah. At $75,000 a minute. Like that's how much, like that's the basic Netflix show is $75,000 a minute. Apple is probably closer to $250,000 a minute. And some of them are as much as $1 million a minute. And so at those numbers, sure. You can keep people's attention with enough. Wow. But if you're not going to spend $75,000 a minute, if you're going to spend $100 a minute or $10 a minute on your presentation, you just can't, you don't have enough stuff to keep people excited. And so there are people who can do it. Tony Robbins could probably pull it off, but you have to be an exceptional speaker to be able to hold people's attention for 30 minutes without any interaction. Go ahead, Mitchell.
5 to 10 minutes, certainly change up the slides at appropriate points in the copy to keep everybody's attention. I'm going back to when we used actual slides. along with the speaker presenting and trying to get that that interactivity at the same time. Anything that's a half an hour or more is a ridiculous waste of everybody's time.
Yeah, and it's not really a waste of their time anymore because they're at home and they don't have to give you any attention. So it's not really a waste of their time. It's just that you're spending a lot of effort and time on something that they're not watching. They're just putting you up in the corner. They're kind of listening to you halfway. They're checking their emails. They're doing all these other things. They're surfing the web. So that's the big problem when you're streaming, is that you're not wasting their time. You're wasting your time, because you're not doing something that actually impacts on them because they're off doing something else. Next question.
Next, we're going to look for Tobias Moss in Minneapolis, and he says, just using the native features of Zoom, what is the max quality of a Zoom cloud recording? What's the max quality of a Zoom local recording, for that matter?
I believe it's 1080. Well, the local, I believe, is whatever resolution your screen share drove it to. So I think that on both of them, if you set up a 4K screen share, it's going to do 4K. Now, is the video 4K? No. The video is whatever was being fed to it scaled up badly, in my opinion. But I think that it won't record the video at higher than 720. The native resolution was originally 720, I believe, for online, and 1080 you can get for local record. We don't record we don't record in the cloud or local from Zoom anymore. If we're going to record something, we record it with an outside piece of hardware. So, but my memory of this is that the 1080p would work on the local one, 720, and then if you have a screen share, it'll scale it up, and it doesn't scale very well. It doesn't, and it's oftentimes a weird format because your screen wasn't a 16:9 screen. So that's why we try to force everything into 16:9. So even when I'm screen sharing, the way I screen share through a ATEM is I open up QuickTime and I run my slide deck through my ATEM into QuickTime, and then I screen share my QuickTime. And the reason I do that is because it will force everything to it'll force my screen share to stay at 16:9 and at 1080 on the way through. And it's also, by the way, just in case you're wondering, if you're not using Zoom every day, sometimes I have to use BlueJeans. It's a great way to get BlueJeans to screen share to work, because otherwise you're just like this little window in BlueJeans. The pinning is not great in that app, or nothing's really good except for the audio. Next question.
Next one comes from our friend Guy Cochran here on the panel from Seattle, and he says, can we do an on-air shout out to our producers and behind-the-scenes volunteers to recognize them for their efforts?
It's great work. Got a ton of people making all of this work. So I don't have a list in front of me because we usually have a list beforehand. I think we did that on the in the pre-show. We talk about it a little bit.
I don't have everybody, but we do have this morning's list for just who's working on this show. Any sense in going through that, or do you want?
Well, we just want to thank them for all of those. I think that, but it's we're breaking new ground, and we've got a great team that's putting that stuff together right now and figuring this stuff out in their spare time. And it's I think we're getting very, very close, and I think Office Hours 2.0, and hopefully a lot of them will join the panel on Thursday to talk about it. And so we'll really be able to, so we'll talk through it there. So if you're watching now, come on back on Thursday. A lot of the crew will come on, and we'll talk about the trials and tribulations of the process and what's happening and what we're learning and so on and so forth. So I think it's going to be cool. Go ahead, Sky, real quick.
I just wanted to reach out and with lots of love to specifically JJ as the person behind the scenes on that I've seen for the longest, not the longest, but he has been a huge foundation in a lot of the wiring and hardware solutions there. And I'm just, again, grateful for just that one person, but there's so many others that are also doing so much heavy lifting. It's amazing.
Yeah. And we hope that most of them will be able to jump on, or many of them will be able to jump on Thursday. Next question.
Paul Wallace in Austin, Texas comes up next. And Paul says, which of your gear, equipment, computers do you leave on 24/7, and which do you turn off at intervals?
Go ahead, John.
For years, I've left all my computers on all the time, 24 hours a day. The only thing I turn off is my Stream Deck. I'm sorry, my ATEM Mini. So when I'm done with the ATEM Mini, I unplug that, and I only use it when I'm switching. But all the other computers are on 24 hours a day, all plugged into UPSs.
Go ahead, John.
When I think about this, I think about if I'm using like prosumer or actual business grade gear, the power supplies make a huge difference. And so if you're using anything that's like prosumer side, I would definitely turn off anything that's meant to run 24/7. It's pretty obvious. Like we have TVs around the office. you can definitely tell a difference between a prosumer one that's going to die much quicker and mostly related to the power supply.
Go ahead, Doug.
Yeah, so I work in two places, my edit suite and then in my production truck. And a lot of the times I leave the stuff off in the production truck, except for a few computers, but in the office here, I leave everything on. And you got to think, when does a light bulb go out? And it's when you flip the switch on. And so leaving things on, you get more or less of that energy jolt. And then everything I have is on UPSs. So if I do have some kind of flicker with power, UPS saves me.
You go ahead, Mitchell.
Yeah, I agree with Doug's assessment of energy jolt. That's probably why I leave the computer on all the time. But obviously the lights, you got to cut them off. And the camera and my ATEM, those other things are turned off in between. And I have them on one power switch, so it's simply a matter of hitting boom, and the Furman powers everything up.
Yeah, go ahead, Bill, real quick.
Yeah, computers and digital stuff I do leave on. However, even my LED lights and things like that, I have on a master switch. I turn them off as soon as we finish office hours. I leave them off until the next day when we open up again. And that's because I'm more and more aware of vampire power. That's just little transformers that are turned in that are drawing little tiny bits of current. But when you leave them on 24/7, 365, and you take that times, 5 million people who may have 9 things hooked up on their nightstands, that's a significant draw. I mean, it's not hugely significant, but it's a part of the energy puzzle for America.
Next question.
Next question. Douglas Carmichael says, when building racks, how do you usually organize your cabling?
I go ahead, Jeffrey.
If you have a rack, you have the rack cage usually has 2 sides to it that have a whole bunch of clips on it. The idea is to take the cable and move it over to those clips as quick as possible without obstructing any fans, because you have to have airflow go through the back of that, especially if you have several different machines running back there. So you'll see a lot of like Cisco switches and things like that, where the cables just go straight to the left or straight to the right. And of course, they're always numbered, so you know exactly which cable it is. But that's the best way to do that.
Yeah, Mitchell?
Yeah, Jeffrey gives good advice. The only difference that I would do is make sure that you try to keep the power to one side and everything else to the other side, because the power is more likely to induce its noise into your analog, particularly if you're building an analog rack that has analog XLRs in there and things like that. So separate them left and right.
Good, Bill.
Everybody who does this admires and loves good cabling. And I will just say there's a Reddit subreddit for this entirely. It's called Cable, and then there's a P word that we don't say here. But just the people who spend inordinate amounts of time perfecting their cable racks and things like that with the most attention to detail you can ever see. And there's hundreds of these kind of photos on that subreddit that I just love to browse through. It really inspires you to do a good job of labeling, cable tying, and making things organized, so when the next person has to come in and diagnose a problem there, they know exactly where they're going and what they're doing.
I go ahead, Mitchell, real quick.
Yeah, real quick. Everything tends to look great in the beginning and beautiful, and you marvel at how the quality of your cable wrapping and your routing. And I guarantee you that in 3 months, it'll be complete disarray.
See, mine is the opposite, is that I when I start a kit, everything looks like chaos because I'm just kind of throwing things together and making sure it all works and signal testing it. And then when I go, okay, this is what I want, then I pull, everything gets pulled into a nice thing, and then you'd have to tear it all apart again. You can't even add anything to what I do. It's like, this is what this kit's going to look like until we break it down to the bones again. And internally, we used to break everything down to the bones often. So that was it. Go ahead, Chris. I
love the phrase you use, pouring concrete. There's a point where you're pouring the concrete and it's going to be really hard to change it. So yeah, it's a good strategy.
Yeah. No, next question.
Sam Squire in Tunbridge Wells, UK says, does anyone on the panel have any experience with the Blackmagic Atem Streaming Bridge as a means of delivering low latency video over the internet to offsite crews for remote production?
Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, when it first came out, Jason Bache and I did some tests, and we ramped it all the way up to hyperdeck high, moving at like 44 megabytes or 44 megabits per second. And our clocks, we did an internet browser clock, a worldwide clock, and it was around 2 seconds. So it wasn't low latency. It was definitely adding in a ton. So if you want low latency, I'd say hardware, some kind of like high vision Makito or a Matrox Monarch, something in that range if you want something high quality, low latency.
Yeah, and it always depends on what we decide is low latency. That's the threshold. So I think that this is at 2 seconds. I think that SRT, I still think the floor is about 500 milliseconds. And then you have, WebRTC, which is about 200 milliseconds, and the switch, which is like 50 to 100 milliseconds. So those are the kind of numbers we start to think about as we go through that, and what do we actually need inside of that. Next question.
George Butters in Halifax, Nova Scotia is up next. We build presentations in Keynote, but have clients who use PowerPoint on Windows. Unfortunately, some of the best features of Keynote do not transfer to PowerPoint on Windows. What are your suggestions, anybody who's used to this?
Make movies. I've done this for them. So we basically build the whole event in Keynote, and then we export it out as a QuickTime. Then we cut it into individual movies, and then put it back into PowerPoint. And then when you click to each PowerPoint, it just plays out the movie. There's like just window after window after window that it plays the movies out. If you want to use all the Keynote tools that you have there, I found that to be easier. And you can, of course, there's a lot of the features that PowerPoint has that you can figure out a way to do it in PowerPoint. So doing it natively, if you're going to have to keep editing it, is fine. But a lot of times we'll keep everything very soft and fast inside of just doing things really quickly in Keynote, working with the client, and then just exporting movies out, so that we don't have to think about it. And you don't need PowerPoint at that point. You can just play it out of a playout system. Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
Very quickly, a friend of mine used to work in a Microsoft booth in the 90s, and every software demo that they did was a short movie that they would play off of a laser disc. And so when the person would say, well, let's enter in a name for the email, they'd play a movie and it would have somebody typing. So I thought of that when you said play movies. And it was crazy because the whole Microsoft booth, this would be 1999, I believe, the entire Microsoft booth was driven off of one Macintosh.
Yeah. Well, and for a while, a lot of us, we were made honest. I think we talked about this in the past. For a while, a lot of us would switch, not me, because I didn't do the thing, but the event companies would switch everybody's event, whether it was in Google Slides or PowerPoint or anything else. It all just became Keynote. They would just go through the trouble of making the conversion, and then they would work on it, because once it gets to the stage, it didn't matter anymore. I mean, no one knew what was happening. Then people figured it out, and then we had to go back to using the native platform, which slowed things down a little bit. I will say that PowerPoint has gotten a lot better. Like they've definitely made it a lot. It's closed a lot of the gaps with Keynote, but it's not the same. but it is much closer than it was maybe 4 or 5 years ago. So you can get 80-90% of what Keynote can do, working in PowerPoint at this point. Next question.
Next one comes to us from Paul Wallace in Austin, Texas. Again, he says, on a Mac M1, how would I create a keyboard shortcut, Shift Command F or something like that, to open the Finder? Why is the Finder so hard to find itself, he wonders.
Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, you wouldn't create one because there's already one there. You just hit Apple Tab and go to the little smiley face, and that's the Finder.
Go ahead, Chris.
Exactly. Apple Tab, the application switcher. I am astonished how many Mac users don't know about this. Like Apple or Command Tab, it opens up your application switcher, and when you tab again, it steps through each app. Oh, there's the little happy Finder face. Boom, you're done. You're there. And Apple Shift Tab goes backwards. Constant.
Oh, I didn't do that. I've never done that.
What?
I do. I go forward. I just go forward until I get to the other side.
Try it. So it's your thumb on on the command, your ring finger or your whatever, and then you can add the shift.
Yeah,
forward and reverse.
Now I admit that I don't have enough apps open that usually it matters that much, because
you just buy computers.
I do. That's what I do.
I need to launch another app. Order a machine.
Yeah, exactly. Well, then it can do its thing while I'm doing my thing. Anyway, go ahead, John.
Yeah. I don't use Finder that often. I end up using the search feature, and so Command Space is also a good one to just jump quickly into an application. And if it's already running, it will just pop open for you. I find that I do that on Windows too. I just hit the Windows key and then type for whatever I'm looking for, so I can keep my hands off the mouse.
Yeah, go ahead, David.
Yeah, and once the Finder's in focus, Command N will crack open a new Finder window if that's what you're looking for.
Or Command Shift N, right, for the to create a new folder. Is that right? Is it Command Shift N?
Yep.
So there's Command N and Command Shift N. Go ahead, Chris.
Also, as you're hitting Command Tab through the application switcher, if you get to an app that you don't want anymore, while you're still in the application switcher, move your finger off the Tab button and tink the Q. While the command is still down, you can quit the app from within the app switcher.
Yes, and that's how I close stuff up all the time. Just quit. Next question.
Next one comes to us from Eduardo Augustine in Panama. He says, which are the best SSD drives to get for the ATEM Mini Extreme ISO? Any SSD will do the trick?
Go ahead, Noah.
No, any SSD will not do the trick. So you got to be very careful on what you choose because if you run out of speed, it will not work for you. So I'll go straight to the Blackmagic website here. If you click on support at the top and then you click your product, which is the ATEM line, you'll see there's supported notes here. And then there's actually a recommended USB-C drive list. And it's going to give you a wide range of drives that are essentially approved by Blackmagic. And I'll also share the one that I use personally. So this is, 1,000 megabits per second. Sorry, I'm going to turn the shader back on so the whites aren't crazy. But yeah, that's the one that I personally use, and the Blackmagic list, so that you can look that up as well.
Good, Sky.
I have personally used the Samsung T5, and it's worked on the Extreme that Guy Cochran loaned to Matt in the kitchen, and that was several years ago, months ago. But the question I do have, I know we had some issues with the T7, so if there's any experience with somebody that has used that for the HDMI, for the Blackmagic, is the T7 a bad thing?
Yeah, I think that a lot of us have had issues with the T7 specifically. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
Yeah, I can't talk about the T7. I use the same thing with the SanDisk for a small portable option, but I also use the OWC Mercury Pro Duo, because the one thing that a lot of people don't realize with the ATEM Mini is you can connect up to more than one hard drive. You can hook up a rated type drive in there, and that's what the Mercury Pro Duo does. And the best part about that is it sits on my desktop, so I need a cord, so I use this. This is a USB-C fiber optic cord, the one you would get with an Oculus Quest 2, 16 feet, so I could actually plug it into the ATEM and bring it to the Mercury Pro and then run it from there. And then I can even hook up the SanDisk into the Mercury Pro because it is a dock in the back, and then it can choose between the drives that I want to use. So you have multiple options there.
Bill, real quick.
Yeah, I just remember I'm a Blackmagic shooter as well. On my 6K, if I hook it up to a T5, it works flawlessly. When I tried the T7s, for some reason, there's something about the menu system. It just did not ever reliably record to it.
It's a caching issue on the T7. It's a different caching system, and
so I think that's why it got the reputation as don't use T7s because of that specifically.
I can tell you that T7, once it gets over half full, will go to a crawl. Like it's really, really fast, and it gets about half full, and then it's barely working, and so that's a probably connected to part of the problem. You can also use NVMEs. You can buy the little NVMe chips, and they're a lot faster than the T5s and the T7s, and tend to perform better even over time. Next question.
Eduardo Augustine's right back from Panama. He has another question. Did a couple of streams from the house? He did a couple of streams from the house of worship. Their audio is not that good. Would you take over the audio to ensure that the stream is successful, or have the church fix their audio?
David.
I think that depends on your commitment to the gig and your tolerance for pain. I would personally lean in, take over the audio, get it right, and then it's done. But your mileage may vary.
Go ahead, John.
If you're lucky enough to be on site, if they're using a digital mixer, you can take over some auxes if they're free. If not, you can do a simple copper split snake, and then you can really take over and do whatever you desire with it. I don't like listening to bad audio. Anywhere I can help is just going to be better referrals down the line. So always happy to lend a hand where I can, as long as it's going to help both sides of the situation.
Go ahead, Mitchell.
Yeah, in order to help them, you need to know everything that's going on, and no good deed goes unpunished. The minute you take on the responsibility of fixing something, you may have to re-architect the entire audio chain to get it to where it needs to be because you don't know what the problem is. So be careful, but also understand the commitment you're making when you say, I'll take over fixing the audio for you.
Go ahead, Sky.
early days of office hours, I was introduced to the word dog fooding. And what that meant was the client listening to the product that they're creating. And I think biggest challenge in my house of worship is that they don't believe it's bad audio. But what the challenge is, it's two different mixes. You've got an internal in the site location, and that's what they're used to doing, and they're knowing how that sound is good, but nobody's listening to the audio, and the poor audience is the only one that's being abused by it. And so how to change the attitude of the whole construct is a bigger challenge for you, and then do the two different mixes, one for the inside and then one for those that are listening outside.
Yeah, go ahead, Noah.
Yeah, absolutely. What Sky said, when you separate it, you can basically have different people mixing for the web mix versus the room mix, right? And so when we did that at my local church, that changed the game for us. So we use Logic Pro through Dante. And so we have, like a set mix and all the channels come in. And so you can build compressors and EQ and all the things that you do in a live mix, but for the web. Another game changer for us was Wave's vocal tuning, because you're protected a little bit when you're singing in a room with reverb. There's just a natural chorus that happens where if you're slightly out of tune, it's less noticeable. But when you're streaming online, your vocals are exposed. So that is definitely something to look into as well.
The big thing that I look at is am I really going to have control over something? Like, so if I say I'm going to take over control, but then they have half of it and I have half of it, you end up with all the accountability and none of the impact, and that's what Mitchell was talking to. That's a very dangerous place to be. So so you want to kind of avoid that. If you can take it over though, like truly take it over with your hardware, your stuff like that, that's my MO. Like I just take over, like I'll just keep on pulling everything in, because it's not because I'm trying to get more work. It's because I can build a much more unified experience if I have the whole thing. Alternatively, when I hire companies, I will try to hire one person to manage an entire pocket of something. So like there's a temptation. I just ordered a SAT truck, for instance, over the weekend, and I didn't hire this SAT truck and that provider and this, like I hired one person that's going to manage all of that for me, and they're accountable from the time it hits the copper in the building to the time it hits the copper in the other building, and everything in between. I want them to just manage that. And then they just tell everybody what they need to do. And it's a little bit more expensive to do it that way, but it means that I just know that's handled and I can go back to doing what I'm doing. So you want kind of to think about whole boxes of stuff. And if you can take over that box, usually I will, because especially if they're having trouble, if they're really good at what they do, I don't take it over. I'm like, I now have a partner that can manage that and I don't have to think about it and I don't go for it. It's the only things I take over are the things where I feel like the folks that are working on it are not as good as they could be. Next question.
Tobias Maas in Minneapolis comes up next. He says, questions about Zoom 1080p meetings. If you've calendared a year's worth of meetings and then flip the full HD switch, will those meetings coming up achieve 1080?
If you have 1080, you should be able to. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it affected ours as soon as we were moved to 1080. So you'll get a new set of things within those meetings that you can make. You do have to set it for those meetings. So if they're all calendared and you do the affect all instead of affect this meeting, you'll see the little switch there and you click on 1080p for everyone. And then you should have 1080p for everybody. And you have to go also in the admin settings and possibly in the admin panel and possibly there's like 6 places that you have to turn 1080p on to get it to be available everywhere. Next question.
Ashley Devon, New York City, says there is a ransomware that is locking up QAP network attached storage boxes called Deadbolt ransomware that exploited a 0-day bug. Sadly, my NAS has been infected. Any advice on dealing with ransomware? If you have a QNAP box, ensure, please, that it's not connected to the internet.
Go ahead, John.
Your best way, if you don't want to pay whatever that fee is always have great backups. Always have your data in multiple locations. I mean, you just wipe away whatever was infected and restore that data. Understand what your loss and how much you're willing to accept, and make sure your backup policy follows that same thing.
Yeah, it's hard. Yeah, I don't know what the price is. The problem with backup sometimes is that if you don't see it immediately, especially if it's staying there for a long time, it affects everything. Like it just slowly works its way through. And a lot of times, the ransomware folks let that hook sink really deep before they pull on it, and so that's the real challenge. It's definitely why I have to admit, this is where my Macs are all online, and almost everything else I don't allow to touch the internet if I don't have to, unless their business is the internet, and then they're not allowed to touch a lot of other things. Just because when we're doing heavy production, I'm always concerned about ransomware. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
I would also check with QNAP if this is a known thing that multiple boxes are on. I'm guessing things like class action lawsuits are going to start to come into play. So maybe they're working on a way to get you out of the ransomware issue, or maybe find a way to help you pay it, or however they're planning to do it. And then at least you can make that decision as to how you're going to go forward with fixing your box.
Yeah, I don't think that they're going to be accountable for that. Go ahead, John.
There are products also that will look at file level changes and understand if there's any sort of wide level encryption happening, so you can catch it early and hopefully prevent anything from going further. That actually can sit on different NAS devices. I'm not sure about the QNAP, but we run some that we've actually caught something infecting one of our shared drives at the office, and we were able to stop it in its tracks because we could identify quickly the machine, get it off the network, and then we just had to go through the process of restoring the files that were infected.
Next question.
Next one comes to us from Mitchell Hill in Wilmington here on the panel. He says, is Dante better on its own network, or can you mix it with your internet Ethernet?
Go ahead, John.
Yes. It all comes down to saturation. I always like to segment as much as I can physically, but wearing it where it's necessary, as long as you have big enough pipes, you can run both. Just make sure to segment the traffic between two different VLANs.
Yep. Go ahead, Noah.
Yeah, we found out at our local church that it's just simpler, easier, and more reliable to separate them. So if you can, separate.
Yeah, absolutely. If you can, but exactly what both John and Noah said, if you can build a separate VLAN that protects the bandwidth that you need for it, and it will work. We've definitely done that in networks, but when left to our own devices, we always separate them physically. Next question.
Next one comes from Douglas Carmichael. When a university reopened their stadium tailgating area, they mentioned how live bands contributed to the energy of the pregame experience. Could a group using FarPlay or similar virtual technology have the same positive effect on the crowd?
Go ahead, Jeffrey.
FarPlay would only work best if part of the band was on stage and the other part was somewhere else, going from there. Other than that, if you decide to have a band play virtually, you don't need to worry about the latency in that case. It's only when you need to have two people in distances work together.
Go ahead, John.
I think really what it is about that interaction between both parties. So if you're going to have a band performing remotely on some sort of LED wall, there needs to be some sort of interaction that can happen both ways to really create that energy. It's not just the band playing together. It's about the audience interacting with the music that's happening and the band interacting in real time. So maybe a product like Voodoo could, if it's low enough latency, create that experience.
Go ahead, Noah.
I can't speak to FarPlay, but I went to a concert for the first time.
FarPlay, by the way, it's FarPlay.
FarPlay, excuse me.
FarPlay is a licensing, and FarPlay is remote contribution.
Well, I can't speak to either, obviously. Yeah. But what I can say, I went to a concert, Alan Stone concert for the first time in like 3 years, right? So first one post-COVID, and people were just craving that live experience. Obviously, virtual is going to take over time, and we'll see more of that. But the house was packed full of people, and they were, shouting and singing along. And you heard Alan say several times that it was like one of his favorite shows he's ever done just because of the response. And so having that feedback from a musician standpoint is huge. And maybe that's part of that energy that is being talked about is, that connection through live music is huge for sure.
Okay, go ahead, David.
Yeah, and to Jeffrey's point, I think if you brought in that remote contributor via one of those Kanye West hologram type gigs or something, that would be pretty cool, and that would maybe get the crowd going.
And this is tailgating, and I was trying to think of it as like I've tailgated a couple times for the Steelers and stuff like that, and we piped in remote all the time. It was called radio, WDVE. So typically everyone tuned into the same radio station pretty much, and so we just listened to DVE all the way across. All right, next question.
Next one comes from Douglas Carmichael again. What music composition software or methods have helped inspire you when you feel stuck?
Go ahead, John.
I like to go to different websites that offer different loops, different drum beats, things that I haven't used it before. Really helps you kind of get out of different views. I also, Corey Wong mentioned that he'll like take songs and look at like the second, third beat and then create the song from that kind of progression, and makes you think about music in a different light and can kind of get the juices kind of flowing a little bit.
Go ahead, Jeffrey.
There are some websites that you can put in a key and put in some chord or ask for some chord progressions, and then you can play along with those. But the best thing that I like to do is I just get in my car and I start driving, and then I just start listening and trying to get something into my head that becomes turns into be a song, and that's usually the best way for me to put together something.
Go ahead, Bill, real quick.
I had an old process of I try to listen to something I haven't listened to before, so I don't generally listen to rap. So if I want creative inspiration, I will listen to rap. Or it's kind of the Paul Simon method when he went to at South Africa and did Graceland. I think that opened up a lot of his composition possibilities because he was listening to something he hadn't heard before. So I'm a great fan of that.
Yep, next question.
JJ McKenna says, knowing that USB hubs are a bit of an anathema, what is the best, yes, best USB hub option along with the maximum extension length that we should look to for a USB port, USB-C port?
Go ahead, Mitchell.
Big fan of the OWC product line. I've got my Thunderbolt dock here, and I've got another one over here, and I've got the new one coming in that fits under my M1 Mac. I just think that I've had no problems with them. They seem to understand the technology correctly. And by the way, 6 feet is usually the length of the USB-C cable, unless you're going over to fiber.
Yeah, go ahead, Noah, real quick.
Same two thoughts, fiber and OWC, for sure.
Yeah, I'd agree. Next question.
Larry Hull in Lindale says, what is the best software for converting MP4s to ProRes?
Go ahead, Mitchell.
Well, for me, the best software is the software I already have, Apple Compressor and also Media Encoder. Of course, you have to have Adobe to be able to accomplish that. But I've had very good luck with Media Encoder.
Yeah, and I just use Compressor for everything. The only other one that I use for a very odd number of things is Handbrake. There's a couple odd things that Handbrake can only, the Compressor can't read and Handbrake can. And that Handbrake is basically a GUI for FFmpeg. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael says, Noah, you mentioned using Logic Pro as a broadcast mixer. Wouldn't you want to use a product like Waves Emotion LV1 that's geared to live mixing versus recording?
All right, go ahead, Noah.
I always love hearing about new gears and tools. That's a product I haven't used yet. The reason why we chose Logic is one, it's software based, so we can have it on multiple computers. Like I have my workstation at home, and so we can do like a virtual playback or virtual sound check, so to speak. So I can do my home mix and play with settings, and I'm also a video guy learning and growing in sound. So that's huge for me to practice on my own. Another thing that we're looking at is like DAW controllers, right? Because right now, since we're all software based, it would be nice to have the physical faders and the hardware to mix with that.
Yeah, go ahead, John.
I use LV1 and Logic. LV1 is really great for low latency situations. If latency isn't that important for you, Logic is also great to use. You're breaking into the whole Waves suite once you go down that path. And so if you don't want to use native Waves plugins or have other ones you prefer, you definitely, Logic allows you to use anything that you want. You can also then supplement Waves sound grid. You can run a controller off to the side and then do those plugins as well within Logic with lower latency. So lots of different options. The biggest thing that would be the breaker port for you, at least Noah, would be Dante. Now you're buying another piece of gear to convert Dante into WSG, and what is that going to cause and headaches down the line for you?
Yeah, I think that we use Pro Tools and Logic a lot for some of our broadcasts because it gives us more control. So we can do a lot more automation and so on and so forth. There's a lot of mixing that a traditional mixer doesn't do as well for some of the things that we do. And also a lot of times we have a studio for the live stream. We have a studio engineer from a recording studio running the mix for the rest of the world. They're taking all the stems and they're building the mix and then they're sending it out. And then the live mix is, off of a Digico or something like that. So that all happens separately. And that's it gives us a lot more control. And then that's the software that person is used to. So anyway, so that's another way we see a lot of that happen. All right. We are changing subjects. We have Marcelo Moyano here. Hey, Marcelo. And Marcelo is from
Alex.
Is from Stream Voodoo, one of the founders, I believe, of Stream Voodoo.
Correct.
And
yes.
And Marcelo and I have been going back and forth for months. Like the two of us have been talking about it, and we meet about almost once a week, and we talk about stuff. And I'm like, oh, it'd be really good if I had this, and then it's there. Like it's amazing. I get new. I've been playing with new builds, and I think that we finally decided that it was ready to kind of start showing some of it. I think Stream Voodoo is from my perspective, a very different kind of app in the sense that it gives us a lot of control as creators to subdivide and move video around. It's not like this. It's not like, oh, we're going to all get into a meeting and have this, but this is much more of a creator-driven, and Marcelo, you can correct me, but I think it's a much more of a creator-driven system that allows us to have all the controls that we wish we had in everything. It is a little heavier because of that, but I mean, as far as understanding it, but the learning curve is a little bit more, but it is super powerful, and they've been adding features like mad in the last little bit of time. So Marcelo, I'm gonna hand it over to you.
Sure.
How did this all get started? So how old is Stream Voodoo?
Well, we started. Hello, everybody, again. But we started in 2020 when the pandemic hit. I remember that like it's yesterday, and I can't believe that it's 2022 already. But yeah, after the pandemic hit us, I started to help musicians to actually stream live from their places. And I saw that, we could use Zoom and do some sort of mix there. But,
and really in 2020, the quality was very low across the board.
Yeah. It was very low. And we saw those live streams from Instagram and DJs playing, like sounding awful. And I thought, okay, we should do better than that, right? So I thought myself, if I can stream to Twitch, right? Like, and if I put like a capture card and I connect it to my computer and I do that, because I did that back in the day, I knew that I could have a great quality. So I thought, okay, we could do something like this. But what if instead of being just one video, we can put 2 videos in the same room,
right? And
try to have that conversation, that interaction, but with much more quality than what Zoom provides. And that was kind of like the intention. I've been there. I use Zoom. It changed my cameras from places to places, and I was using OBS in a live stream.
Right.
And it didn't fail, but it's not a great experience. You don't have control over the feed.
Right.
And that's kind of like my intention. I'm like, how can I have control in this camera? Right. Like I want to be able to put it whatever I want, stream it out there, either playback, record it. Right. That control is something that I thought that if we could do. And yeah, we started.
And how did you partner with who you're working with now?
That's a nice story. So I was looking for a solution, like I do. I've been in the software industry for 20 years. We started with another company called MindSmack, which we started back in 1999. And we always build software and applications and mobile, websites and things like that. But right now, what I was doing is, okay, I need to get a solution for this. And I went to the university online, which is called YouTube. And I search for, RTMP streams, when you see live feeds, what can you do to stream them, right? Everything that is related to RTMP was something that I was looking for. So I searched in YouTube and I searched for RTMP private servers. And it's a really fun story because I found one video that is 45 minutes long. I remember it was 3 a.m. in the morning, and I'm like, okay, 45 minutes long. And the video title was a conversation about RTMP. And I'm like, okay, I have to see this and see what it looks like. And there was this guy called Richard Smart, which is actually our co-founder and CTO. And he was talking, this is a 2017 video, and he was talking about how the streams are going to be the future. And the streams has to be 24/7 and they have to be seamless. And you need to have the power to control all of that. And I thought, okay, this is the right guy. So what I did was find out who he was. And it's funny because this is the way I do things, right? I found him, his website, and I contacted him via his email. And then I said, hey, I was looking, to get help, if we can help some musicians and some DJs. I wanted to do this. And it's funny because I wrote that email at 4 a.m. And I'm in the East Coast, by the way. So, and I went to sleep, and I remember I wake up the next day and I see the reply, and it was at 5 a.m. that he replies to me saying that he can help me, of course, and we should chat. And we chat and we met. That's how we met. We started talking, and he has a lot of years, several years of experience in streaming for high, for bigger audiences. And that's how we start. Like I told him what I needed, and then we saw a demo that we run, and this started actually in the web because we wanted to make it like super fast back then. So we did a web version first.
Right.
And then, long story short, 1 year passed. I actually, at the beginning, the thing that actually kicked this off was, well, when I met with Deadmau5, and then Deadmau5 saw us when we didn't have pretty much anything yet, and he couldn't believe the quality of the feed and the super fast setup. Like, it was 5 minutes for him to integrate our video into his website. And that was shocking for him because he was looking for 5 months with other providers to give him a live feed that is a decent quality and that it works. And, for us, it was just one click. And that's how we started. And a roller coaster came after that. He became part of the company in a week. And that was crazy moments. And then I met with you because of Guy Cochran here. He contacted me once, seeing that Voodoo was kind of like an ultra low latency solution, which actually seems to have what it takes. And I remember him telling me about you guys. And that's when I find out about you, Alex, and I saw that you guys have this daily podcast, and I was very interested in, being part of this. And then you and I get together. I think last year, October, I think it's September or something.
That far back? Yeah, because we've been going back and forth
I don't know.
for months. Yeah,
I guess so. But the fun part is, like, you really liked what we were doing. Where we were going with this, which I was really proud of. It's a validation for us. And then we're just, trying to make broadcasting accessible for everybody and making it super easy.
Yeah. Why don't you show us a little bit about how it works?
Sure. Yeah, for sure. So what I will do is share my screen here. Quick. Let me see. I have disabled that. If somebody can let me share my screen in Zoom, that would be.
Yes. So,
cool. Yeah. All right. Let me see. All right. Let me know when it's ready.
Do you have him selected? No.
Yeah, it says disabled for me yet, but it's fine.
Noah, do you have him as a co-host?
I don't. Let me get that going. Sorry.
All right.
Now you should be good. Sorry about that.
No, it's all good. So let me share this. I will share this one so I can see what I'm sharing with you guys. Okay, so this is my second monitor. I do have 3 plus the MacBook Pro that is running this. And I'm going to open the Stream Voodoo for Mac, right? Which is the app that we're talking about. So I just open it, and this is the main menu, right? And we try to keep things very simple. Like, this is, a way for you. I mean, what Stream Voodoo is? Well, Stream Voodoo allows you to connect multiple video feeds in real time with ultra low latency and studio quality sound. I know it sounds like a pitch, but it's exactly what it is. And my goal, and the goal that we have with Richard and the team that we created this, is to make it super easy. So we have the concept of creating a studio in the cloud, right? And you can either join one, so you don't need an account to join one. If you had an invite, you can get, set the link there. Of course, you can contact us, and the Magic Link player, I will explain what that is, but it's a tool for playing our live video. Yeah. So if you create a studio, which I'm going to do now, it's just one click. I just log in automatically because it took, the credentials from my keychain. So what it asked me just now is just my name, and I can choose the server region because of wherever I go, or, wherever I am, I can be either West Coast or East Coast or even Europe. That will help you with the latency a little bit, but it's actually pretty similar for any server location that you choose. It won't make such a difference. Sometimes it will. If you click in advanced options, you can set up the name for the room or the studio, right? And put the password. In this case, if I call it Stream Voodoo, right? Because why not? And then my name there. And if I click Create Studio, it just did, right? So we have a studio online. And the thing here is, okay, how do you go live, or how do you share anything live? Well, it's just one click. If you go to sources, in this case, and I will share my camera.
And this is something that's kind of cool. Like, these are all the sources that are available, and you can turn all of them on. Like, right, so it's not like, oh, I can do a screen share, or I can just cut something to the window. I have all these sources that are available to the computer, and I can turn them all on and stick them all into the system.
Yeah, exactly. And I have cameras to share, right? I have my capture card here, and then my FaceTime camera from the laptop. I'm using a MacBook Pro here. And then you have your displays. As you can see, I have 4 here. And you can also share any application. So if you want, you can just turn on an application and you just share it and it will go live.
Yeah.
I will do that with my camera now so you can see. When I turn this on, what I allow you to do, you can go and publish the stream automatically. You don't need to change anything, but we set up qualities here and you can change that to whatever you want. So you can do 1080p, 1440p, 4K. It's up to you.
So you should put it, obviously this is limited to your bandwidth as well as but you're able to just turn these dials all the way up. We're not asking anybody. We're not trying to figure it out. You have total control over each stream.
Yes.
And every stream can be different, right?
Every stream can be different. Every stream has its own controls. It's magic. That's what we call it voodoo, right? But yes, that's what it is. So I change the bandwidth if I want, like the bit rate. We started in 4 megabits per second because that's more than enough. Then you can also change the codec here before you jump in. We have VP8, which is what Zoom uses regularly, right? But we also do VP9 and AV1 is supported as well. There's some issues in Chrome with AV1 lately, but these 3 codecs are supported. AV1 has a much better ratio in terms of the bandwidth that it consumes for the quality of the image that you can get. Like if you compare AV1 with a VP9, for the same image quality, you can have the half of the bandwidth in AV1 and it will look 5 times better, which is pretty crazy. I will do VP9 for now because it's really cool. And then you choose the stream audio, right? If you're going to pass your microphone or not, that's up to you. And you choose your microphone input. In my case, it's going to be this one, right? And the studio sound on, this is a feature that removes the echo cancellation. I think like John will know what I'm talking about, but everybody else, I think, you do what I know what I'm talking about. The removing echo cancellation means exactly that. If I turn this on, the full spectrum of audio will come through the mic, and that's good for musicians. That was something that deadmau5 was really, really liking. So I just leave this off because if it's going to be a conversation and I'm close to my mic, I just don't want any echoes to happen. So I just leave it off, and the quality is extremely good anyway. If I click publish stream, that's it. This is my live feed.
And again, all of those controls are still there. So
yes, exactly.
So you could keep on, you could, I could adjust this. This isn't working the way I thought it would. Also, and I know that you'll get to this, but there's also, you got to show them the record.
Oh yeah. So this is the thing. I'm live, by the way. With just one click, we have a live feed here, which I can actually show you with a magic link. Not Blackmagic. It's our magic link, and we call the magic link, and I will show you what it does in a minute. But like Alex says, you can do many things with this feed. This is a 1080p feed at 4 megabits per second. You can change this again, change your frame rate, change your resolution again if you want to, right? And codecs, quality of sound, and also share this in a siphon environment. And those who know about siphon knows that if they turn this on, if I have a siphon player, you can pass the feed like that. And also the record stream, which is pretty cool. If you click record, you have all the options for recording. And this is something that Alex asked us very politely.
Over and over again.
He was feeling emotion like about the options that we are offering here, which is all these codecs,
ProRes, right? ProRes. You can just, and that's a local record of the system. So again, there's some issues with, you got to be careful about what kind of computer you have and the power of you're streaming out and writing. But if you on something like an M1, it's going to record, easily a 1080 and stream at the same time. And so that for a lot of us who are trying to do interviews, being able to know that we can get a local record, at the computer is super exciting.
Yeah. So you can record that locally here, and that's great. And after the recording is done, it will dump the file into your local computer. You choose whatever your location is going to be. Then you can also RTMP this stream, which is, clicking on it, put in your RTMP key and password, choose the resolution. And if I click connect, then I will go and be live on either Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, or whatever. Maybe your own RTMP server. That's more up to you. And and we have here another feature that it's kind of like experimental in a way, but this is a stage mode, right? So if you click on this and you put it on, you can see that I have another window, right? And that other window, it's just to combine all the feeds in one window. And I will get to that in a second, but the goal for that stage is instead of having independent video feeds like we have now, you will have all combined in one window, and you can manipulate that and just create another feed. So for example, I will invite you, Alex, so you can join me in this room. Just to invite you, I click on this button And I have a create invite button here that will give me a link for you to join. And this is another cool feature that you asked me for, having total control over the remote person that is joining, right? Some sort of like a Darth Vader mode. That's what we call it. So if you click on this, lock new participant settings, what it will allow you to do is prompt the user that is joining, the person that is joining, to accept that you have no control over your camera or sound or anything like that. And the host has the ability to manipulate that. But in this case, the user can choose if they like or accept that or not. And that's really good when you want to, control remote feeds. So Alex, I'm going to send you the invite link on Discord, so you have it.
And the delay you're going to see is not because he has a problem. It's because my Synergy has just stopped working. Hold on.
Oh, cool. Okay.
How amazingly cool. All right, hold on a second. I just
no
keep
worries.
talking through it in just a second. I just got to figure out why it's not.
So if I share my screen, let's say that I want to put my screen online, right? And I want to do it. I have another screen here with the Mukana chat. So if I click on this one, I choose the resolution and everything. I can put 4K if I want to. I can put the 10 megabits per second. BP9 if I wanted to really push the quality. We don't need to stream audio here because it's a screen share if you don't want to, but it's your choice. And if I click publish stream, you can see I have another window here. And this is just another stream, right? And you keep the controls here. Everything is fine. And these are independent videos. So as you can see, you can change the audio input for this particular window or the audio input for this one. And when somebody joins remotely, you can also change the audio outputs, anything like that. And this is a live feed. So I'm going to push my window into this screen and you can see it there, right? So this is how easy it is to publish streams. And when I say publish, if you click this magic link, which is what I'm trying to show you then with Alex when he joins, what is this magic link? Well, we call it magic because it's just like magic. You click on that and you share that link with someone. What I will do is open a tab here. Let me paste this. You can see my screen there. If I paste this link, that's an output. I just muted it, but this is my output on the web in real time. And you can see here, let me put this here. The latency is not existent. Like you can see how small, like super, super tiny. We're talking about 40 milliseconds or less. And what this does is allowing you to have this sort of quality, anywhere you want, right? Usually what I will do is share my magic link with the panelists. So I guess that I will share this in the Zoom chat. So you can see this link, the output of my feed. Let's see if I can do that. And I don't know how many people we have in the Zoom call.
It's 139.
That's nice. Okay. So I may take down the server. Now the server should be fine, but maybe I will have a limit up to 50 people watching the live feed, and they will have to just wait for some people to just close the feed and then others open it. I don't know if you think that that's a great idea. Should I do that?
Well, we could do that, or we could take a couple of the questions. Alex seems to be offline here for a moment. We do have, you've got a bunch of questions coming in from the audience. So why don't we hit the first one of those?
Sure,
you can talk about that a little bit. And when Alex comes back, he can do the demo. The first one comes from Jonas Dattel in Stuttgart, Germany. He says, does Stream Voodoo have a way to route traffic on private backbones? For example, jump on an AWS backbone in Australia to get remote talent from there.
Yeah, we totally do. We actually use AWS for going into Europe and Asia, and we got to set up a node in Australia, like close to your location, and you can load up the server there, have the connections there, and actually.
I was curious because you said when you were configuring the servers and you had East Coast, West Coast, you said it doesn't make that much difference. You said there were certain cases where it might make a noticeable difference, but are you finding the web just in general all around the globe is fast enough to make these connections? And
well, it depends on your connection as well. You remember this little detail that the cloud, it's really complex, right? It depends on which day of the, which time of the day are you connecting to, where you are connecting from. Like, for example, with deadmau5, this is like a nice story, a little quick so people understand what we're talking. So he wanted to stream from his house, and he wanted to have a live show and stream it from his page without using any social media. And he wanted to look at 1080p, BP9, 10 megabits per second, and do it like the whole, thing. And I said, yeah, we can do that. And he says, okay, but can we also enhance the ping, which is actually the latency between our server and his location? And he's in Canada, right? Near Toronto, but he's in the middle of the forest. And he has one antenna, a giant antenna that he has. You can look at it in YouTube, where he has a dedicated antenna for his own connection. That's it. So we put a node in Virginia, which actually is in the same location where deadmau5 house is. And we got to have him on 1 millisecond.
Wow, you got it down to 1 millisecond delay between transmitter in Canada?
Crazy.
Yeah, that's nuts.
It was nuts. And we set it up within the day. It was pretty intense. But yeah, so the latency will not make that much of a difference. But if you're really looking to get ultra low latency, you will care. You will take care about which server you can choose.
Yeah, if you're doing music collaboration or something like that, where fractions of a second matter, I can see that.
Yeah, totally. So that's that. Yeah.
Okay, well, let's move on. We got another question here from Jonas Datel in Stuttgart. He says, what redundancy options does one have with Stream Voodoo? Is there a possibility to self-host the front-end servers as an active backup?
Yeah, well, the goal, redundancies, like I said in the beginning, with Richard Smart, he's been doing live streaming for 12 years, right? Having servers all over the globe. Most of the tech that we have, it's our own implementation. This is a good thing to notice. We are not using some sort of API from some big provider that actually gave us access to their servers or stuff. No. We implemented ourselves, the technology itself, and we run in AWS, of course. But the redundancy, well, it's what AWS give us. And the experience that we have over 12 years being streaming to many places and having shows on Twitch. If you see Twitch, that streaming platform, some of the tech that is running there was actually made by my partner, Richard Smart. So
really,
the redundancy, yeah, and he's been working with Twitch for quite a while as well. So
because that's the biggest low latency playground on the planet, because everybody who's gaming wants, if they can get an extra millisecond, they can do better.
It counts. Yeah. Trust me. Yeah, he started with live gaming for streaming. Live streaming for gaming, and then the milliseconds counts. It's really like that. So the redundancy there, we do have it, and it's been very solid. One of the things that people ask us about redundancy, and if we can, there was some big company that I cannot mention, but they ask us if we can stream to China, and yes, we can. So we are maybe one of the few that can do that. But
yeah, we've had some conversations on office hours lately about, I guess, that there's a lot of difficulty, or not difficulty, but there are challenges working with the Chinese government. Yeah. And so it's great that you're one of those who learns how to get around them. And I think that'll be really critical for some clients. Let's move on. John Wallace in Pontiac, Michigan has our next question. And he says, do you have on your roadmap a webinar replacement product?
Yes. Now that you mentioned that, that's a really good question. We are working in a product that is called Voodoo Club, right? And the Voodoo Club, it's going to be exactly that. Ideally, we want people to be able to invite an audience, let's say, of 50 people, maybe 100. We will put the top number there, depending on how many people you want to access your live feed. And yeah, we will give you total control over the feed, so you can mute everybody and you can have this audience in a list, and pretty much the product will work like having the list of people, and you will be able to choose whoever wants to join you in the live stream, and they will join you in video and audio, and then you can take them out if you need to. I mean, that management power is what we wanted to give for a webinar. Yeah. And
Marcello, what's your sense of the type of typical client that would really benefit from this service? Is there a class? Is it largely in music? Is it in other kinds of performance? Is it what do you see from your clients? What are they asking for?
Well, what I see is like there's a lot of people that does video production remotely. Those are the first guys that are coming in, which is maybe most of you guys too, but that's kind of like the idea. Those who care about the quality of the live video, right, in terms of the reliability and the stability of the connections, those are the ones that actually pay us, and they actually are paying for the web service. And we didn't even have launched the Mac app yet. This is like a very nice preview here in
tell us, yeah, definitely tell us about that, because a lot of us are Mac users here. So
yeah, it's an exclusive. So what I show you, an exclusive. So what I showed you just now was a preview of the app that it wasn't even launched yet. But people are freaking out about it because of all of these features that we added to it. But on the website, it's been a year or so and even more, and we have a lot of like a really high retention rate. Pretty much 95% of people started using it, and then they just keep using it. And most of them, like I said, are video production people, but we also have musicians. Of course, that mouse is one music producer, but he also uses it for video game interactions. And let's say there are gaming companies that are using this. And you know what? One of the key factors is, of course, the latency, because it makes you feel like you're next to the other person. It's incredible, the feeling when you join the room and you're like talking like this. It makes you want to talk more and like communicate more, because it doesn't matter where you're located, you feel next to that other person. And that's something that I feel really, I feel like it's very, very important these days. Sometimes the fatigue that you have with all these video conferencing apps is that 200 millisecond latency that nobody knows about, but that's what gets you.
We talk about that a good little bit. It's just the quality of a web interaction has a lot to do with whether you can sustain it for a long period of time, or whether it's just, I'm just tired of Zoom today. I just need to get off and do something else.
Yeah, correct. So our intention was not to replace Zoom. We don't want that. We just want to enhance the experience with, this app, and allows you to have super easy ways to connect with anybody and share your video instantly. For example, we have video editors that are using the platform. We also have, when you edit a video, you can share your Premiere or your Final Cut Pro now timeline live in one click and share with somebody across the globe, and they will see your 4K, retina display in full glorious quality in real time. So we have a different set of clients that are using it, and this is pretty much for everybody that actually cares about the quality. And I think it's going to be getting much more spread over the time when people really notices the quality.
Yeah, that sounds really exciting. What about the financial arrangements? What does it cost to involve ourselves with this? If I wanted to bring you in and allow myself to show video work to my clients, are there tiers? What's the business model?
we do have plans. This is like a for professional setups, let's say, but the plans that we have is just one. The smaller one, we have the lower tier, let's say, is the Voodoo Duo, where you can have 2 connections, like I'm having now with Alex. He just joined me here. The 2 connections, and that's $30 per month, which is fine. It's an entry point. And then you go to a plan called Voodoo Cinco, which we call it because of that mouse, right? Voodoo Cinco, it's a fine thing, but it's 5 connections, five connections to the studio, right? And that's $150 per month. And then you have a switcher plan, which allows you to have 10 connections, and that's $250 per month. And then you can get higher than that if you want to go more in the enterprise side level. We can even give you more connections, like 20, 30, or 50, depends.
So it scales depending on the scale of operations you're running.
Yeah, we can go in the dedicated server side of things, which is going to be around $3,000 a month or something. It all depends on what the client wants at that point.
I want to circle back just a minute, because I understand it better. The Mac development effort, how hard was it? Because it sounds like you were a PC product in your initial development cycle.
It was a web product. Let's call it like that.
Okay,
it was a web app, right? It runs in the cloud. It doesn't need any app, anything like that. But once we show it to Alex, he really liked it. And we knew that we were going to work in the Mac app, because I am a Mac user. I have a MacBook Pro here. I have a Mac Mini. I have all Apple, pretty much every Apple device today. But what I did was I knew that the M1 came in. When the M1 chip came out, we knew that video was going to be crucial. And we know that the Mac can take advantage of this tech a lot. So we were creating the Mac app, and that's when I met Alex, and he told us that if we're going to be building this out, it's going to be huge because we're going to be helping a lot of people. And if you think about this, this is the way that I see it. The Mac app makes things super easy. It's just one click, just to set everything up. It's another click. Just share your live feed. It's another click, and that's the mindset. Like what Apple will do if they create a Mac app well, for live video, it's what we did.
Yeah, they work very, very hard to reduce what they think of as friction for the user so that there's very little that stands in the way of users being able to use their products.
Yeah, and what we want is give you the simplicity, just one click for everything. It's working, right? And super fast. Like you don't need anything to learn about this. There's no manual instructions or something, but you can go crazy if you want to, and you have the total control power that you can imagine. I have Alex here.
Alex is back. Great. Excellent.
Yeah. We'll talk about it in after hours. I have a bug that I've never seen before. So anyway, sorry about that. I won't have audio going into the Mac Mini that I have there, because what happened was, for everyone, I had to go to an M1 because it's running on an M1, and I'm not on an Intel for the show. And so there's a long story that we'll talk about in after hours. But right now, you can see my video. You should see my video through.
Yeah. Let me share my screen. I mean, the magic link, I don't know if you wanted to share that, Alex, in the Zoom chat, or how do you want to put it?
Yeah. Now that's the magic link that you gave me is actually joining, right? It's not viewing.
No. Yeah, I send you an invite link, which is different. Right. You join the room like that, and that's. And
did you send me a magic link as well?
Your magic link, you can take it yourself from your video. And if you click on the magic link.
I can't go over there again.
Oh, okay.
Can I do it? Can I do it on this compuper?
Yeah. I mean, if you see,
because we've been as the app we have been using in the past, we've been using just the M1 app. Let's see here, but I can just do it on a web browser, right?
Yeah. I just sent you the link in Discord, Alex. If you want to share that,
I can share that with the panelists, so the panelists can see it. Yeah.
The panelists can see it. Let them open that, and I will send mine so they can open mine as well.
Oh, I can't share mine. So, you sent mine. Okay, I got it.
I sent you yours and mine.
Okay, great.
So if they start opening the feeds, they will see them live.
Hold on one second. Yep. So this is for the panel. Those are two different connections there. So you should see it. One that's Alex, Lindsay, and one that's Marcelo in there. If the panelists, if you click on one of them.
Yeah.
Oops. Okay. And do you guys see us?
A white screen at this point on mine.
Oh, you have to click play. It's a security issue. It's a player.
There he is.
You see it?
Yep. I've got a headshot of you at this point.
Yes.
On the magic link.
Okay, great.
And if you wave Marcelo, if anyone's got Marcelo open, you can kind of. They're pretty. They're not. It's a little ahead. Yeah, like the definitely. It's definitely faster on Stream Voodoo. But the cool thing here is that if you look at that web page, if you make that full screen, you'll notice that there's no debris, on it, and that's a whole bunch of people having that live feed. Like, so that's
I'll just note your video quality is outstanding.
Yeah.
It's really very good.
I just put Alex on my big screen here. So it's good.
Yeah. And it's a but so you have this low latency, and the idea is that all those endpoints are at that low latency and able to grab onto the ISOs. So you could send that ISO to 3 different places, at the same time, as opposed to, having to bounce it back and forth between folks.
Yeah. And if you guys are watching my video feed, I also have setting a good quality on my end. Let me know once you're seeing it, because I will do a quick demo that I always do when I showcase the quality of this. But let me know, if you have my screen.
Yep.
What I usually do is this, look. Right?
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
And I do that to show the bokeh. I know photographers and videographers out there, they will see and like this. And it's just a Sony camera connected, but I always like to do this because it shows the quality of the feed, right?
Yeah, the feed looks really nice.
And yeah, I remember Alex commenting back then that it was kind of like one of the best things that you have ever seen, which I'm really proud.
It is. I mean,
work.
from a WebRTC perspective, it's just
Yes.
a really good. And if you wave your hand a little bit, I'm looking at both of them at full screen, and this is where I really notice it. So, if for the panelists who have it open, when he raises his hand like that, if I do it too, the frame rate you'll notice is better in Stream Voodoo. So it's that's where it's the resolution is close. The two of them are pretty close in our 1080p stream, but but again, this is also not, you don't have to jump through any hoops to get this. I mean, it costs money, but you don't have to jump through hoops to try to figure out how you're going to get a 1080p stream or a 4K stream, coming down. So.
Yeah.
And the questions have blown up, Alex. We've got like 14 or 15.
Let's get into it then. We'll dig into it quickly. And if we don't get to all of them, Marcelo, I think you're open to, you know how to get into after hours. You've been in and out a lot. So we'll continue it. I do have, I have a little time after 9, but we want to keep moving.
Sure.
So anyway, let's go ahead to the next question.
Okay. Jonas Datel, Stuttgart says, how does Stream Voodoo deal with packet loss?
Well, that's more relying on the WebRTC stack, but ideally, we do have a very nice way of handling packet loss. If you lose them, there have to be, a decent amount of packet loss that you can get. Like, again, remember when we talk about the latency and your distance to the server, the longer the distance, the more often maybe you can lose more packets. But the way that it handles is we're pretty much very, very low in packet loss. We do have some tools that allows us to see how that works, but pretty much if you do have a connection that actually supports this type of thing. I mean, the bottom line with us is we didn't want to make you have to buy or purchase any other extra hardware to run Stream Voodoo. I mean, just now with your Mac, you can do what I'm doing. Of course, you need the camera and the light and the setup, right? But the things that you use to connect with Zoom will be useful to use here, and we work pretty much out of the box.
And the cool thing is, again, if you have enough bandwidth, you can have a computer or multiple computers grabbing onto every single feed. Now, these are still, they're still able to talk to each other, low latency, but you're grabbing all of those feeds individually. We have seen in some of the tests that we've done with Marcelo that you see some small, with packet loss, you'll see some small pixelization here and there. It's not like a breakup, but it's like little sand of pixelization where it needs to kind of catch up. So it's inevitable on any platform that's doing low latency. They're going to have some breakup, but it's actually a better breakup than even satellite, in my opinion.
Yeah, if you put, for example, if you do have a connection that supports this, right? If you have an Ethernet connection, of course, not Wi-Fi. That's a rule. Mm-hmm. But you can choose 10 megabits per second, let's say, or 8 megabits per second, and go to AV1. And AV1 will look incredibly well.
And again, if you have the control, you can also turn it down. So you can say, I want to turn down the bandwidth because that person is clipping, is breaking up at a certain bandwidth. Yeah. So being able to have that individual control over every single feed, not like this is the general meeting feed. This is like, I'm going to take this person and lower their resolution or lower their bandwidth usage or both, so that I can have that person look as good as they can look with their connection. But that doesn't bring down the whole meeting. It means that other people can be sitting at whatever resolution makes sense.
Totally. And if you want me to share my screen once again, so we can show the people what the controls are in the remote feed.
Yep.
That could be good. Let me do that quickly. Share the screen.
And we've got a ton of questions though, so we'll want to show it pretty quickly. And then
sure. Let's go with that.
While doing that, go ahead and let's go ahead and shoot some more questions in.
Sure. Yeah. John Wallace in Pontiac, Michigan is up next. He says, does Stream Voodoo offer a direct player that can be integrated into self-hosted websites and streaming to another platform like YouTube or Facebook?
Yeah, well, the RTMP stream here, you set that up and you go to Facebook or YouTube from this app directly. This is a feature just for the Mac app. Still, we are not having this in the web version of this. So from the Mac app, you can choose the stream and just send it there. And then the direct player that we have is the Magic Link that gives you that player output. We also have in the web version of this Super Magic Link, which is not implemented here yet. And the Super Magic Link, of course, it's super, but the super about it is that it has the video embedded and a chat on the side. So you can have your own Twitch in one click. And if you click on that feed, you get that link, you share that with someone. You can see a video with a chat next to it, and you can chat with people that is joining that feed. Everything in real time.
Next question.
Guy Cochran, Seattle. Are gamers and esports the biggest users of Stream Voodoo now?
Yeah, they started to be from the beginning because, we are the only ones that offers 1080p 60. If you know what that term is, 1080p 60 with ultra low latency for gamers is a big deal. There is a gaming company that runs, it's for PC. I'm just watching kind of hear people typing, but it's for the web, right? So they use the web. They really like the ability to integrate with OBS. I know OBS is not a very friendly tool for many, but
again, and this is something that because it runs on a PC and in a web window, this is something you could have all these outputs. You can have these links and be having them in the cloud, just pushing them to OBS or to vMix.
Yeah, the integration we do with OBS is very straightforward. You click on the magic link, you get that feed clean, and you go to OBS and add a browser source. So you paste the link there, click OK, and now you have a fixed feed in OBS, full screen camera, and you can put it as a scene and do whatever you want with it. That's what gamers are doing in the web version. And there's a company, like I said, that they are recording remote feeds from gamers all over the world. So they've removed that, that pressure from gamers to record themselves locally and then send files and stuff like that. I'm talking about the web version, right? They invite people in the web version and then they use OBS. They pull the magic links into OBS, BP9 or whatever you want, and just record that like that. Reducing the production time for this gaming company from like 5 to 7 days of usually production for games, for videos, for marketing purposes, to 2 hours. I mean, that's pretty impressive. That's what we like to help.
Next question.
James Hutchinson in Dublin, Ireland is up next. Explain how remote streams can be managed, please. Can return feeds be created?
Well, What Alex is a return feed for me just now. And what I am, I am a return feed for him as well. So we are both in this studio in the cloud.
And here's what's cool is that you can have with Zoom, you have one feed going back to the person. If you want to, you could send your feedback. You could send another feed completely with a whole bunch of information and everything else back to that person. If they have enough bandwidth and CPU power, they can put up multiple screens that they can, or push them out to different screens on their computer or other computers. They could have a little Mac Mini, and this is the return screen for this. This is this. So you could send them 3 feeds. You could back to them without any and all they're doing is clicking on links.
Yep. And you go deep in the rabbit hole, and it goes, and you can see the matrix code and everything. But
it's like. Let's go to the next question.
Douglas Carmichael says, how do you ingest content into Stream Voodoo? Do you use a proprietary app or can you use any streaming software?
Yeah, if you want to pass content into this app and just get a magic link from it so you can have an output feed, right? Like anything, it's pretty much from this menu here. Like I said, any app that you open will be here for you to share. So let's say that I want to share, I don't know, let me see if I can share something here. Well, this Zoom call, right? If I click on the Zoom call, it will ask me for the resolution and everything. It's just another feed, right? And if I click publish stream, well, it opens.
And now I see it on my side.
Yeah, this is a Zoom window. It's not the conference, but you know what I mean. And this is just a feed. And if it says video in it, then you can see it. And if you open a QuickTime video, let's say, let me see if I can do that. Hold on.
We can show some more in after hours if you want to show it. I think that I want to make sure we try to get to as many questions as we can.
Yeah. So you can play back anything that you want inside the app, and that's pretty much it. And in the web, you can use an OBS virtual camera if you want, and just play back through Voodoo. Super simple.
Yeah. Next question.
Eduardo Augustine in Panama says, how do we integrate this in an ATEM Mini or not stream from the Mac or PC?
Interesting question, right? The ATEM Mini. Well, we need to do some more tests, but I think with the siphon share, the intention there was to, if you turn this on the feed that you want, if you have a siphon player, which I think ATEM Mini takes siphon signals.
It doesn't, but you still have just an HDMI out of a computer into the ATEM Mini, or the ATEM Mini can be the source for Stream Voodoo to stream out. That's what you're seeing us through. You're seeing me through. I don't know what, but I'm coming to you through an ATEM Mini right now. Actually, two. Right. One's going into Zoom and the other one's going into Stream Voodoo. So.
Yep. that's your answer.
Next question.
Jonas Datel, Stuttgart, Germany says, does Stream Voodoo have an API or an SDK to integrate Stream Voodoo into other websites?
Yes. So like I said on the beginning, this is around tech, which we're really proud of, and we have an API. And of course, to create this Mac app, we use our own API to really build it, and we are finishing the details for having to be accessed by developers. And yes, you will be able to do that pretty soon. Use an API and integrate. For now, you can integrate, like we offer this, and you can connect with us and we can explain how that works. But with the Magic Link, you can embed that in your website and have the live feed going into your website if you want to.
Next question.
Kyle Hammond in Chicago says, to broadcast a 3-person show, would the Cinco plan work, or do I need a switcher plan to broadcast?
If it's a 3-person show, then it's less than 5, less than 5. So it should be good. Mm-hmm. Usually we tell you that you get like a switcher plan, just because if you add more connections and you have to just keep them adding to whatever situation you might be in, maybe a switcher would be a good fit, but you can try with the Cinco to start for sure.
Next question.
John Wallace, Pontiac, Michigan, up next. Will you be creating a Windows app as well?
It's in the works. We plan it. The idea was to first start with the Mac, the power for Mac users. The Mac in the web browser is not a very friendly relationship there. So we went to the Mac app first, but yes, the Windows app is coming soon too. We are going to be taking it from the web and making it happen really quickly, I think. Yeah.
Next question.
Jonas Datel in Stuttgart says, what Chromium version is needed to pull in the feeds into OBS? Did you have issues with OBS having an older CEF version?
That's a good question. We did have some issues back in 2020. There was some CEF issues, but I remember that the issues on Chromium was just for the Mac version of Chrome, which actually was an issue that we had before. Now it's updated, so it works fine. And in Windows, we never had any issues with CEF. Yep, it works straight out of the box.
Next question.
Jonas Datel, Stuttgart, when sharing multiple cameras, how do you deal with a limited amount of encoders?
Well, if you share multiple cameras, then I guess you will just deal with this. If you pass them through either screens, I don't know what you want to do with the feeds, but you don't have any limitations by sharing any sources from in the
it's just raw bandwidth. It's raw CPU power, right? You can only a computer may only be able to encode a certain number of cameras.
Yeah. Yesterday I did like a test with 8 live videos coming through the MacBook Pro and remote videos and stuff like that. And it was the first time that the MacBook Pro actually turned on the fans. First time.
Next question.
Douglas Carmichael says, is Stream Voodoo designed as a contribution platform or as an end user platform? And what is the end user experience like in comparison to other services?
Great question. I think we are both. The goal for us was to give people the broadcasting quality that they want without having to spend, crazy money on this. Because if you see, the market is, we have Zoom in one hand. Great. Zoom is great for video conferencing. We get that, and that was fine. Skype and all these other tools, Google Hangouts. And we saw that the other side is things like live view, right? Like broadcasting quality. Then you go to the other side. That's much more expensive. And even NDI, it's good too, but you need to get the cameras and the encoders and stuff. We don't use any of that. We don't care about encoders that much on our end, but it's not that we don't care about them. It's not a good expression. I think that we don't need those encoders to run. I think that the Mac in this case shows the power of computing that it has, and it can handle as many videos in live feeds as you want, and then you can do whatever you want with it.
Next question.
James Hutchinson in Dublin, Ireland is up next. He says, how long does the free trial last? Are there any special offers for office hours?
That's a good question. So our trial is 7 days. And I know that might sound really short, but we started that with the web version. We didn't decide to have, I think that we will do a different trial on the Mac version. We didn't decide that yet, but yes, of course, on office hours, we will try to come up with something, of course.
We'll work on that. We'll work on that in order to make a good deal for people. So
yeah. you care, guys, about quality, and
Yeah.
we are here for you. So
Excellent. The
The
next
panelist
question.
rate, that'd be nice. Eduardo Agustin in Panama says, can the feed be easily embedded into a website? I noticed you created a web link in your browser.
yeah, takes you 1 second, just one click, and you have your feed in the online, right? And you can embed that into your website. The thing is, you need to see with us what will be the limit of the audience that you can have through that. Like the idea of the experience with the super magic link that I was talking about some minutes ago, it allows you to have up to I think it's 50 people at the same time watching, right? That's like the threshold. Because to be honest, and Alex knows this, I'm sure, scaling WebRTC is expensive and complex. It's not something that's super easy to do, right? That's why you have compression in the videos in Zoom, and everything is like super compressed, because they want to keep the data rates going low. We are the opposite. We want you to have all the control and the quality that you need. So for those amounts of audiences, that's great. But we also can offer you an RTMP embed player. So you can have a different connection. RTMP will have probably 4 seconds latency, right? 3 or 4, something like Twitch. And you can have much more audience there, and you can use Stream Voodoo for that as well.
Next question.
Noah Sargent, Fullerton, California, is up next with, I see control functions in the bottom left corner. Can you control pan tilt zoom cameras through Voodoo?
Yeah. So the controls that we have here are for this feed in particular. I mean, if you're seeing my screen being shared, I can change the audio output from this feed, which is not my feed. I have a different set of controls. And of course, I can turn off the camera, mute the person and whatnot, and also ask him to record the stream. But we haven't implemented yet the pan, tilt, and zoom features. We didn't explore that, but of course it's going to come, I guess, soon. It's another path, but we don't have that feature yet.
Next question.
Douglas Carmichael back again with, how do you bring Stream Voodoo into a broadcast production pipeline? Is there a Zoom ISO or a Zoom OSC equivalent for Stream Voodoo?
Yeah, well, not yet, but you can use us for now. If you have OBS, you can do a virtual camera and go into Zoom, but we're working in our own Voodoo virtual camera, which is coming soon.
Well, and also Zoom ISO, this is like all those individual feeds. That's kind of like, I mean, it's a very similar to Zoom ISO, which is that you can just take each feed from different computers, same computer, and just start pushing them out. So this Zoom ISO, many of the things are very similar to what Stream Voodoo does. And Stream Voodoo it's just a matter of putting it on a machine, putting that magic link on for different people, and then pushing it out. As far as OSC, it just doesn't work quite the same way. Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, I just said in vMix add browser input, and then I did a 3-up, so now I can, do these merges and things like that, and bring Alex in and merge it back down. So yeah, it's just add browser input and fires right in. And
that's in vMix, and that's on your home computer.
Yep.
So this is So he's pulling those individual feeds in just like you would with Zoom ISO.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. And this works also with vMix. I don't know if you know vMix, or I think.
Well, this is vMix, right?
This is vMix.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, this is pulling it into vMix.
Awesome. So that vMix, OBS, the feeds are there. Just need to pull them right in.
Yeah. Next question.
Georgie Kennedy Jr., our friend in Washington, D.C., says, when will the Mac version of Stream Voodoo be available?
Well, it is available actually now. We are putting it online so you can download it. If you get an account on Stream Voodoo, and you can start using it, just put your username and password, and it's going to be there. We will share a link. Right now, it's streamvoodoo.com/Mac, right? And that's where you can get the app. But you need to get the account in our website, right? That's about it.
Next question.
Douglas Carmichael asks, can Stream Voodoo clients choose specific channels from a multi-channel audio interface to ingest into the pipeline?
Yes, well, the audio management is for now for each individual feed. What we suggest you to do is to handle the audio via not another app, but you can, if you know how to use Blackhole or virtual audios, that's going to be a much better way to manipulate audio in a way. And we use, I mean, we're not affiliate with them, but Loopback, it's worth every penny. And it allows us to have total control. Like it's a Stream Voodoo for audio, just to be honest. And you can control the audio, the virtual audio is there, pass them through, and it works great with Stream Voodoo. Like, great.
Yeah. Next question.
Jason Panks in Nashville, Tennessee wants to know if there are any hardware recommendations for Stream Voodoo.
Well, in the Mac environments, I guess an M1, of course, an M1 chip will be what we suggest. This app is going to be Mac OS Big Sur or newer, just for those who need to know that. And that's pretty much it. There's no, well, the other hardware will be more like the setup, but you guys talk about this often, like your camera, your light. If you want, I can tell you my setup. This is Sony i7 III. I have a ring light. The lens is a 24 millimeter lens, 1.4 that allows us to do this, right? And it is, I have a capture card, which is in this case is a 1080p capture card, but you can put others. I mean, I'm using the Razer one from Razer Gaming. It's a gaming company. And then you can have Elgato or Blackmagic studio recording capture cards. Those are kind of like the usual suspects that work really well.
Yeah. Next question. Next question.
Next one comes from Jonas Dattel in Stuttgart, and he wonders if you support VP9 Profile 3 for 444 streams.
Not yet. But we kind of. This is a conversation that we have with Alex. We do have Profile 2. Profile 3, it's coming. We do have AV1. So AV1 is kind of like getting there.
Yeah.
One of the things that we spoke with Alex is how do we do 10-bit HDR video? And that's what we were dealing with. And we know we have 422. Fine. Wait for us. Just give us a couple of weeks.
Yeah. It really is. When he says a couple of weeks, it probably will be a couple of weeks. It's, the builds are coming out fast and furious with lots of new features.
Yeah. The issue is the server. Usually when you switch to Profile 3, our server has to support it, and we need to work on that. But yeah.
Next question.
Douglas Carmichael up again. How would you incorporate chat or other interaction features into the Stream Voodoo end user experience? Would you need to use a third-party tool like Mukana?
That's a great question. Well, we need to decide about talking with Alex and see if we want to use Mukana with this. I'm being honest. But besides that, the Super Magic Link that we don't have implemented yet in the Mac app, it will be next week.
We can just embed it right into Mukana.
For sure. Yeah, this is a video player. You can embed it wherever you want, and then have the chat next to it, which Mukana could work out. Yeah.
Yeah. Next question.
Bill Hops in San Jose says, how do you traverse firewalls? Do you provide a turn server?
Well, yes, we work with turn servers on our own, and we don't have any issues with firewalls. Actually, Stream Voodoo works even in places where Zoom doesn't work, which, says something.
Next question.
Next one comes from Douglas Carmichael again. He says, could you see Stream Voodoo usable for a Belfast method type remote workflow?
And Marcelo, I'm not sure if you know what a Belfast method is, but it's basically we're taking over hardware at a remote location to move the sliders and switch and everything else. And I don't think it would, I'm just going to say, because I don't know if Marcelo really understands it, there's no reason why it wouldn't work, because you could also, what's interesting is you could probably send out different feeds that different people need. And so they just open up those magic links. And so they'd have the view that they need of the show. And then you would have, and then you still have the same hardware back and forth. It's not going to pass the hardware instructions back. That would still be on its own. But I think that it would actually probably give you more flexibility for the overall production.
Yeah, we need to work on that. But yes, correct, Alex.
Next question.
Douglas Carmichael comes up with another one. Would the audio quality from Stream Voodoo be sufficient for remote music or voiceover recording sessions? I'm thinking of a similar use case to Source Connect and services like that.
Yeah, this is going to be much better. and I've been there and I tried it. So if you turn the studio sound on, we use the Opus codec, and we set it up at really high quality to get an incredible sound quality stream that you can use for recording. I haven't checked yet about the studios, recording studios to be used in the material, but I know that it was broadcast quality for them, and it was very, very good to work with the material that they can get from this.
It may not handle all the channels the same way you do Source Connect or Unity Connect, but it would.
Yeah.
But the quality will be very high.
For sure, the quality is super high, and then you need to just work out the channels of the audio. Like I said, sound loopback isn't one tool, but then you can have others. If you know, like handling the audio separately can work out really well too.
Next question.
Douglas Carmichael asks, what sort of analytics does Stream Voodoo offer for broadcasters?
Well, For now, we didn't have going into that path yet. But the goal for us was to show us some statistics that are needed. I talked about this with Alex. We are having that in production, so we can take all sorts of stats that we also use for when we are building this, right? And we're going to be showing them in like an output window, so you can see exactly what's going on. Our goal will be to integrate them on each video feed, so you can see, the latency, the ping, and everything that is working through the feeds. But yeah, it's coming.
Next question.
Douglas Carmichael again. Is the Stream Voodoo Mac app scriptable for use in automated workflows?
Not yet. We did have that in mind. For now, we are accessing some keystrokes in the workflow that you have with the feeds. For example, if you roll over this window here, I don't know if you can see that, but if I press the H key, then all the controls will be hidden. And then pressing the H will show up the controls again. That's a basic, of course, setup there. But what we want to do in the future is access more keystrokes and give you the chance to, by code, connect Stream Voodoo feeds to, switchers and other things that can pull off, get this camera, get this magic link, or stream things out or turn off cameras and things like that. For now, you handle it from your Mac.
And last question.
Wow, great job, everybody. Jonas Dattel of Stuttgart has our final one. Are there any ports that need to be opened in a firewall to receive or send Stream Voodoo?
Not at all. You can go through any firewall with no issues. We don't have any specific ports that you need to open. Nope.
Fantastic. Marcelo, thank you so much for joining us.
You're guys more than welcome. It's a pleasure for me to be here, after all this time. And,
after all the going back and forth, we've been quietly back and forth. I'm like, but I want this button and I need this button, and then he's showing me new things that they thought of, and we've been talking about it for a long while. So it's really, really slick. And I, it's interesting for me. One of the reasons that I wanted to bring Marcelo on was because it is really distinct. It's not a replacement for Teams or Zoom. Like, we see a lot of crowd. There's a big crowd that is Teams and Zoom and and WebEx and all these other things, and we can compare them all to each other. And this one's sitting over here, it's over. It's doing something. I'm going to do something completely different, and give us a different way to access it. So, as production folks, I think it's pretty exciting. Anyway, thanks to you so much again, Marcelo, and thank you to our producers for the great questions. This conversation doesn't happen without you. All those questions coming in and pushing the outer envelope there. And then thank you to our panelists. We also can't do this without you. Great answers in the first hour, and it's great to have you here in the second hour and participating with us. So thank you so much. And now we will jump into After